Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Deep Thoughts. Today's episode, as you can see, is going to be about microchipping human beings, or chipping human beings. Now, if you haven't seen my episode on transhumanism, and you're interested in this subject, I would recommend that episode as well. When I think about this subject, I can't help but recall the interview that Alex Jones did with Aaron Rousseau at a hospital where he was suffering from intestinal cancer, stomach cancer of some sort. He was on his way out. You can only assume he was murdered, because that's how they roll. And Aaron Rousseau was recalling a conversation he had had 20 plus years before, if not 30, with Nick Rockefeller, who was telling him that the end goal of the Rothschilds and the world elite was to put a microchip in every human being and be able to ultimately control them, track them, you name it. And the funny thing is once we took that information, because Aaron Rousseau was obviously very, very trustworthy. He had made the movie Freedom to Fascism, mainly focusing on the 16th Amendment passed in 1913 that turned on illegal taxes, meaning constitutionally illegal taxes. And he proved, right on his documentary, that this stuff was illegal, that even the head of the IRS knew it's illegal. It's voluntary, but once you volunteer into it, you're subject to laws that could put you into prison if you don't do it right. But he said that there was going to be a time when every human being was going to get microchipped. And that if he joined them at the political level that he was being solicited by Nick Rockefeller to run for the Senate, that his chip would have a little KMA reading in it, which means kiss my ass. I want you to think of everything you could ever be bribed with. Money, women, sex, whatever. Possessions. And I want you to think about someone telling you that you could be a god on earth through a chip preference. Imagine what, some can't understand normal thinking Pelosi would do for that chip. But we start spreading that information, and what happens? People tell us we're crazy. Not only are you a conspiracy theorist, but now you're paranoid. Right? There's just that extra little exponential kick on the end, times 2. But now we carry around something better than chips. We carry around cell phones, which have all kinds of chips in them. Not only a chip that says who you are, that's fully trackable to every other piece of information they have on you in every other database on planet Earth, but it tells them where you are. No matter how you put the device down, it's filming the room. It's got a speaker and a microphone that can always be turned on. Now, you will hear a lot of claims about the fact that if the phone is off, all kinds of stuff can be invoked on the phone while it's off. I will tell you that the phone would have to fully power up internally to be able to get what it's capturing out the door, to get it to a transmission or receiving station to then broadcast it further. Now, if every appliance in our house is forced to turn into an electric appliance, your water meter, your electric meter, your gas meter, then the amount of power needed to jump it to the next broadcast station might be minimal. It just depends. Phones are made very flimsy. Why is that? Well, one, they love charging you for the break, the broken screen. But it also requires you to cage it inside a case so that if you drop it, it doesn't break. Instead of just building the thing in a case like a fucking toy. We buy toys for children all the time that are meant to be slobbered on and beat up and stepped on and thrown out windows. They seem to do fine. We can't seem to create an adult version of that, while the military takes everything and turns it into one of those. But the case keeps it secure and keeps it closed, which means your likelihood of popping it out of the case to take out a power supply to somehow get yourself off the grid is not likely at all. So the other thing that the chip thing actually brings out in humanity is that there are all these things that those of us who are awake will find, and we're finding it through some other person who's actually blowing the whistle somewhere. And we report it, and of course we take all the slings and arrows of being the messenger on this. You have to have a pretty good constitution to not give a shit what anyone else thinks. But then, your people around you that aren't awake, who don't want to wake up, will say all the things that they say, that you're nuts. And then one of two things occurs. The thing that you're talking about vanishes because it's so outrageous that everyone shut it down in the local level, the state level, the federal level. And it's only because people woke up that this happened. And so we succeed, we get rid of it, and the people that are calling us names benefit from the fact that we chopped it down. And then there's the second side of it, which is what we did say was going to happen, and what they said was never going to happen, and that we're crazy for saying would happen, happens. And then all of a sudden, the person that was so sure this wasn't going to occur starts pretending like they knew it all the time, or big deal. They go from calling you a name and calling you paranoid to saying that they were on board the entire time. And it's this latter thing that's actually very interesting, right? In the former example, there was a situation where in the United States they were calling for essentially a national ID. And it was going to cost states millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars to buy these machines, create a bureaucracy, create a place where you could go get these things. And it was in addition to your driver's license, to your social security card, to every other piece of information you have about yourself. You had to carry this national ID because they were trying to turn America into Nazi Germany, where you're going to have to actually show your papers to cross state lines. Well, it was shot down because of its expense more than anything. But now it's come back in a different form. We'll see. But I shared the whole thing with my family in the Midwest, and I said, well, have you heard about this thing? Oh, no, I've never heard anything. I can't imagine that. And then sure enough, comes into the press, gets knocked down. And the funny thing is most of the folks that go into the name-calling thing, they obviously don't have enough courage to come back and say, oh, I'm sorry, you were totally right about that. Which isn't important at all, but what's important is that they say, I found the information. I totally found it. It's out there. But the funny thing about microchips is that we actually have a very special one here. It's unlike chemtrails, where if anyone pulls their head out of their ass, they can look up in the sky, study all the normal flights and study weird flights and make a deduction using intelligence. With chipping human beings, you have for the last, 15 years, one experiment after another in laboratories by institutions, by government-funded institutions, privately funded institutions, people getting chips put in their body. Right after 9/11, they tried to push this chip agenda. A shilly family in Florida, a bunch of crisis actors, chipped all their pets because they didn't want to lose their pets if 9/11 happened in Florida. A buddy of mine did a documentary episode in the UK. In around 2005, there was a gentleman who had put a chip in his body for the very first time in their region. It was all filmed, a little capsule, a little computer inside. In Europe, they've been using chips in a way that they get the youth into it. But it's totally flopped. As far as I know, it's completely flopped. And there's some physical reasons why it's flopping. But they told the kids, hey, you like going to nightclubs? Yeah, oh yeah. On your French welfare check? Oh, sure. They said, well, if you put a chip in the web of your hand, right between your thumb and your index finger, you go right to the front of the line. These clubs will agree to let you right in. So once you introduce this type of technology, you are entering the realm of transhumanism, just so you know. So that's why that other episode's actually fairly useful. Why make this episode? Aren't I done? I told you. They're doing it. People deny it. It's actually existing. They've put them in there. I'm going to tell you some health risks here in a second. We're going to start studying what can actually be done in the body. The number one reason why I want to make this particular episode is that I need you to understand that certain technical trends of tyranny are going to come with the most amazing sales pitch you've ever heard, and they're going to mix probably false flag with the cultural sales pitch of this. But they really don't need the false flag. They can just make it the coolest thing ever. In multiple places on the world right now, there are bodies of folks that are trying to crack this. What do I mean by crack? I mean they are trying to figure out the cultural uptake, sort of sure thing formula for getting the next generation to see chips as the coolest thing they could ever have. You know, there's all those stupid toys they have at Christmas time. This is going to be, at some point, the toy. It's going to be cheap. It's going to be subsidized by governments. You know, holding a cell phone might be demonized. We're all afraid at our level of having a single chip inside our body. The truth might be that the time that makes it come out is the time when there's multiple chips, like piercings. You know, there's a little chip back by your ear to play the audio back into your drum. There might be a chip by your mouth to pick up what you're saying. Maybe it's on the side of your nose. There's chips in your vital signs of your body to give you other feedback information. Chips inside your eyeballs on your visual cortex to project a augmented reality HUD right in front of your eyesight. Maybe your entire eyeball becomes synthetic. I'm going to make a prediction that if this ever takes off, and we'll have to fight a war of some sort to ensure that it doesn't, whether it be an information war or a physical war, it's going to come on like fucking day and night. So let's talk about some of the health risks, because some of them are already well categorized and well collected. As far as I know, every single human being that has had a microchip inserted in their body with this newer technology. Again, pacemakers seem to be okay. I don't know how they do it. Very low voltage. There's a very confined, how should I say this, charter of a pacemaker. Uses virtually no voltage, and it is just sending very little information. The second they have a chip that's like your cell phone, the amount of information is going to be significant, and the amount of power that it's going to take to move that information in a circle so that it can escape the unit is going to be high. All the research that I bumped into says that the folks that kept this sort of chip in their body, and you know, the new ones are fairly primitive, or the very first ones are fairly primitive. Some look like big horse pills, little chips inside them. That's the one my buddy videotaped in the UK. The ones in the palm are much, much smaller, about like a Tic Tac. But everyone's getting cancerous cells and infections around these chips. And it's the same exact reason why your cell phone gives you cancer. Power. Now again, if you've watched every single episode, you're going to go, oh yeah, of course, we understand because we discuss this all the time. If you haven't, it's very simple. Electromagnetism, which is the electron cloud that goes around an atom that gives things a conductive charge, is very dangerous and disruptive to human DNA. It acts like a sort of a circular saw, literally spherical saw, that goes through your DNA tissue, your proteins, and really just can mix up everything that's there. It's the same exact reason why you don't stay in the sun, hours and hours and hours every day. So they have a challenge on their hands right now to embed these systems in your body in a way that the additional power supply that is not being derived from your metabolized, sugar calorie conversion, that extra power supply doesn't cause a cancerous trail in your body. Well, that's a big one, and that's a beautiful one for now. But where would they put the power supply itself? Well, with these little pill joints, these little pill jobbers, they actually have a tiny power supply inside the pill that only goes for a certain amount of months before it expires. But there are all kinds of other ways to power these things, which is going back to Nikola Tesla's life, where he was transmitting power in a frequency. So imagine I transmit something at you in a big wave of energy, and it hits your little teeny tiny chip that doesn't need much energy in the first place. And your chip starts to activate wherever it is, because I've created sort of a photoelectric current inside the chip. Now again, that would require that the chip is fairly close to the surface of your skin, if not right on top of the skin. I am actually predicting in my mind that this is going to be like tattoos. It's going to be a badge of honor to see how fucking tyrannical and fascist you can turn your body into. You will probably see a marriage of tattoos, piercings, and chips. Honestly speaking, if you could put it on the end of a piercing, you could increase the proximity of the chip away from your flesh, and you might actually survive the process long term. But again, we're going to get into the social impact of putting chips in your body and what they might do to you if you do so in just a sec here. So let's talk about what they gain by putting a chip inside you. Because that's the real question, right? That's where you can start getting into the motive. Who stands to benefit that you might use to have a conversation with someone who's yet to know, have this information divulged to them? Well, what do we say on this show in terms of them? They always want control. Now, they want money too until they have enough money to do anything that they want, which is a very quick game that they play. And so, they don't really sit around having conversations about getting more money. They'll talk about people asking for money to serve them, but that's about it. They want control. They have a paranoia that what they have gained will be taken away from them. They fear that if they allow us to be too intelligent and learn, that we're going to find out the scam that they are, because what they do is fucking evil on this planet, which is called usury and control and all that stuff. But they also fear that if they make us too dumb, that we get stupid and violent. Like a lot of the police forces around the country, around the world, have lowered the IQ of the individual that they're hiring, such that we have a bunch of droogies becoming cops now. So the good cops looking around going, Jesus Christ, I'm surrounded by a bunch of, 90 IQ high towers that are just looking for a reason to shoot fucking anybody. Which is why we have, handicapped people in wheelchairs swallowing, 16 shots to the dome. Because the guy had to get a kill count. Just playing Call of Duty ain't fucking satiating the system anymore. But now, what can a chip do? Well, we talked about the basics, right? It can provide GPS information. It can obviously, wherever it's put in the body, it can do a couple things. One, it can usurp a function in your body, which might be a medical application. This is where transhuman tries to sneak in through a medical application. Well, this person's blind. We're going to put a chip right on the visual cortex and simulate, using this photosensor, sight. And everyone's like, hell yeah, given the blind sight, Jesus Christ, who's going to turn that down? With hearing, all these different things that are impaired, maybe it can give you an erection. Who knows, right? A lot of guys will get chipped if you can shock the old hoo-ha. Guys, let's hope they don't make one that gives women orgasms, because the world would change in a day. Well, let's just take identifying you. You've got a chip somewhere on your hands, because your hands are usually exposed to the world, right? And so it has an identity. Once you can be identified by a chip, then there's an amazing amount of control, because all the external surfaces to your body can be dictated and allowed using your identification, such as your money supply. So what do we do in this world? We work, we translate the calories of energy that we expel into monetary units which again are connected to all kinds of fiat methods of creating value. But you have to prove your connection with your money supply in order to have a transaction, to live life, right? Debit cards, credit cards, pure cold cash, coins, etc. How much identity theft would exist if you had to actually physically be there with your chip? You never carried your card on you ever because you didn't need to. And so your identity theft people are going to have to work extremely hard to figure out a way to steal whatever unit we have for remote recognition. But what if even buying a product at home required your chip to be present on your cell phone to then shake hands with the e-commerce system on the back end and buy something? It'd be pretty badass, because if the culture switched to this, then they could say, oh my God, there's no more identity fraud for the United States of America, because we switched to a chip. And this is one of the reasons why your cards all have chips in them now. We all hate the fucking chip reader in the United States now. You got to put your goddamn card in the bottom of this credit card reader. Takes for goddamn ever to complete a transaction. Now you hate your card. And they're going to let that sit there for a long time, because they're trying to bring on Apple Pay to every single thing on planet Earth, Android Pay. It's one more layer of middleman, by the way, for the retailers. So the retailers now got to give a little chunk of it to Apple, give a little chunk to Android, whoever's, taking care of the transaction. It's not very quick. Putting your phone over the little doodad, at least right now, it's no faster than that chip thing. So let's say that they convince a generation to move over to this sort of cashless society, which I have a whole episode about. And then, just like YouTube yanking advertising because you're saying something that doesn't match the fake news narrative and the military-industrial complex fake narrative, you're waking people up. You're identifying crisis actors in the middle of false flag events. Someone whispers to someone, and then all of a sudden you lose all your ad revenue. Strangling you, basically, right? Making it impossible for you to be a part of any movement where you're waking up society. Can you imagine, out of a show like this, and I'm really not that kind of show, but let's just say InfoWars, they figure out the top 100 sentences that you can read to another human being in a particular order to match a particular type of person, and you wake up completely. Oh, you were born in 1957? Okay, let me look. Oh, yeah, okay, you ready? Statement 1, Statement 2, Statement 3. And then by the time it's over, these people are completely awake. But in order to reach everyone, it takes millions of dollars. To develop the questions, develop the statements, it takes millions of dollars. But it's gagged. It's gagged. So you become a dissident. You become a resisting force. And all of a sudden, your little chip has problems. Now, how many of you have ever had an electronic device that's connected like this to your life fail? Imagine you have one in the web of your hand, and somehow you injure your hand. Somehow you shock yourself. You touch something, and it shocks you. Maybe it's wintertime. You just have a big static electricity charge, and it discharges right into your thumb or your index finger. And somehow it's a little bit of a charge that then fucks up your hand. The little chip inside your body. It fries it. You bang your hand. Someone, does something physically. And now you have to go back to surgery. And because every single state monitored surgery system is going to take for fuck all ever to schedule you in and make it happen. One, it's mutilating your body, creating scar tissue, which always runs the risk of cancer. But now it is a cancer-creating little machine in your hand. So you're basically just creating a cesspool in your body, an open sore, a lesion, so that they can control you. It can't be too deep in your skin because the units have to be interacted with. The deeper it goes in your skin, the more of an electromagnetic field is going to require to talk to the chip, which means you're going to get exposed to more and more TSA cancer rays for your greater good. Well, think about it. Every single time you buy something, you're going to get exposed to more lethal energy than a TSA body scan, potentially. It's bad enough that the cell phones schematics or cell phone instructions inside your phone tell you to keep it a quarter inch from your 3/4 of an inch away from your head, otherwise you'll catch cancer. That's a phone. Now, obviously, it has a massive power supply. It's running operating systems and doing all kinds of wild shit. But your hand, well, it's embedded. If it's part of some piercing, some dangling trinket on your body, you're going to have that dangling trinket on your body all day long. You'll never be able to get rid of it. If it gets snagged on a piece of clothing, how do you put your sweater on? Even if it's real smooth, it's there. If it's a ring, someone can steal it. If it's a piercing, someone can steal it. And once they steal your chip, Christ almighty, they can go run all over the place and charge up a bunch of stuff. How much do you think they would control you if there was no limit to how much they could control you? Some of you will understand right away they'd probably just end your life if they could. But let's just say that one cardinal rule was not easy for them to pull off, a mass murder. The thing that people don't realize when you talk about the elite thinking about us, and we talk about it every once in a while, there's two terms. When we're not at war, they call us sheep. When we are at war, they call us cattle. The sheep, what's a sheep provide, right? A sheep provides wool. You keep it alive. It follows the dog. It's easy to herd into spots, and that's the way it works. With cattle, you're talking about something that has been harvested and raised to be slaughtered and eaten. And that's what our soldiers are to them. That is why the VA hospitals have never been funded well for hundreds and hundreds of years. That's your proof. So now you put a chip in the human body and you have unbelievable control over their commerce by way of having access to their money and having the control over what they have access to purchase based on a bunch of policies. Now, there was a great video made in the late 90s where someone was really thinking this thing through, and they created an interface where they had a guy calling to buy a pizza. And they had this fake conversation between a guy calling for pizza and the operator who answers the phone call at the pizza place. It's actually extremely well done, even though the interface is ancient now. But what they did was they dramatized up this notion. And again, some of us can get behind this, but then some of you will understand where it could go. But the fictional character buying the pizza was a diabetic, was overweight, and was essentially costing the system a tremendous amount of money in insulin shots and medical care because of their obesity. And so as the order progressed, the pizza operator started getting sort of the HIPAA information about this person, their medical information, and saying, oh, you're not allowed to buy this unless you pay the surcharge. The surcharge being, this is you prepaying your medical treatment because you're so unhealthy, because you're obese, because you're diabetic. It's a very sobering video. It goes on for like 10, 15 minutes. And it just keeps ratcheting up and ratcheting up. And it just shows you the level of control that could be exerted on humanity. It was very THX 1138 with a little bit of idiocracy in there. Now let's look at the trends of the youth of the world. Now, I don't know about you, but when I was young, there were a tremendous amount of trends that came out of nowhere. We dressed like MC Hammer, after, Spandau Ballet came over, unbeknownst to most of us, and showed, hey, we can wear a bunch of flappy clothing. Michael Jackson got up and had a zipper jacket, parachute pants. Everyone started wearing that stuff, right? It's an arbitrary thing that we added to our body to give us style. And then, of course, the arbitrary pick of music for whatever decade you're from becomes the trend. And it's sort of a phase, and it's sort of harmless, and some people continue to wear their older styles and that kind of thing. They're not hurting anybody. That's just the way they do it, right? Well, that's a reality every single decade that we've been on this planet. Now imagine that this chip thing gets stuck inside that envelope. It gets stuck inside that mechanism to make it popular. Except this time around, it has a transhuman quality to it. A list of benefits. Look at how all the social justice warriors of the world have grown addicted to the idea of being a martyr, or being the savior of humanity. Because they go to college, they create $100,000 worth of educational debt, they come out and they can't get hired pouring coffee. And talk about feeling useless, talk about feeling had. And so they struggle to find any arbitrary purpose in life. And that's where the devil swoops in every time, right? Again, I don't necessarily believe in a devil, but you know what I'm talking about. I think the movie is called Fright Night. It's about Dracula moving in next door to this kid with this single mom. It's the guy that played the king in Princess Bride. Plays Dracula. But there's a great scene in that movie where there's a little nerd kid who's always being marginalized by his buddies. He's called the geek, the nerd, and eventually it gets to the point where he is so tired of being called names that the Dracula character says, "Wouldn't you like to be immortal?" He pulls out his big cape and he wraps it around the kid, and the kid becomes a vampire. He's somebody now, right? It's no coincidence that most of the fans of Marilyn Manson have become social justice warriors. They're the outcasts. They can't control their eating, so they get obese, so they get extra diet. They get an extra diet. They get, ostracized from humanity. They're really smart in some cases in certain areas of life that make them geeks, and so they're pushed out of society. Well, this is going to be the target of this transhumanism group. Imagine a human being that's never able to keep track of their physicality, right? They're always overweight, they're always out of shape. Maybe they're old, maybe they're young, doesn't matter. Perhaps they're even born with such bad habits that their genetic pool just gets so corrupted so quickly that they're always sick. And a transhuman scientist comes in and says, "You know what? I can put you in a fucking robot. You'll be a cyborg. We'll just lift your brain out of your head. We got all these little connections we'll make to it, and you can be a RoboCop." It's exactly like the vampire coming up to the kid and saying, "I'll make you a vampire." But now here's the thing. Episodes like this and other conversations, which are much more in-depth and much more scientific than mine, that are online already, if we can pre-expose the kids to the scam, then we get to prevent the next generation from jumping in. Now, there'll always be those rebels that'll do it. There'll always be those communities that never got the information, and they will jump in. And they will suffer the slings and arrows of tyranny. But it's better that we actually have some weird European community that was duped to get into a nightclub. One, the nightclub's not doing them any favors, right? Shitty partner selections, venereal disease, cesspools. You're drunk all the time. You're on drugs all the time. And by the way, you're at the front of the line, so you go first. So you're the most fucked up of the whole bunch because you have a chip in your hand. If there's ever a chip that controls your e-commerce, or your commerce in general, and one of them breaks, and your friend's like, "Oh my God, I was on vacation and someplace in the world and my chip broke. I couldn't feed my family, couldn't feed myself. It was horrible." It's better that we have those little one-off situations than to have the whole world go at once. But believe me, they're dreaming up a way to make this a trend on a cultural level. And I want to make another point about this, and that is that right now our two shilliest pop science blowhards are Neil deGrasse Tyson and Bill Nye. Those two guys tend to get the most exposure here in the United States. Well, there are probably two or more upcoming individuals that are going to be incubated to have this credibility, like an Elon Musk character, right? This total phantom character out of South Africa. What's crazy about that guy is that he just goes around the world, seemingly pretty unhealthy physically, so he doesn't have the drop on how to fucking be, balanced. And this guy just makes shit up, and the press just fucking puts it in the papers. I mean, SpaceX, which is nothing more than a computer graphics company, building props, has claimed to do all these things that NASA couldn't do for 50 goddamn years. You know how long NASA's been trying to launch a rocket up in the sky, move it over, and land it back down on its back? That is a program that is older than the moon missions. They've been trying to do that shit since the 60s. And they crash virtually every single time. I think only the last 10 years have we had one successful attempt by NASA, and it was the most clumsy fucking thing you've ever seen in your life. It was like luck of the draw, man. In SpaceX, Jesus Christ, they can seemingly just have a giant throw their rocket into the sky, and they've got retro rockets to land it on a moving barge in the fucking ocean, right? It's crazy. But this guy just announces one outrageous fucking thing after the other that no professional institution's been able to do. Doesn't mean that someone can't do it that easily, right? If Steve Jobs had been involved in getting us to the moon, I guarantee you something would be on the moon for real. Maybe he's that guy, but the level of ridiculousness coming out of this dude really begs the question of whether or not he's real at all. There's people trying to find out his background, because no one heard about the guy at all until he was involved in making the Tesla company. A buddy of mine was involved in filming the Tesla company at the Roadster level before the Roadster had even been drivable. But, we've got... we're just waiting for Elon Musk to say he can travel through time and take us to the Wizard of Oz, this dude is absolutely out of control with his claims. Now, it's nice to have an inspirational person in society to make us think, okay, we've gone long enough without anti-gravity. When in the mid-'60s, every professor in every major college in the United States of America had a philosophy of how to do it. But like I said in a previous episode, if we could operate willy-nilly in the world, then they would lose complete control of humanity. The idea of creating an ISIS to take over all of the Middle Eastern foes of the bankers in Europe. Well, shit, if they could fly around on hoverboards or flying inner tubes, they come right to America. Because in their brain, they're never told enough to really know what they're doing. They're total shills and tools of the intelligence agencies. They got nothing else better to do. Most of them can't afford a dowry to get married. So it's like you're never going to get laid legally under the eyes of Sharia law. What else you got to do? Well, let's fight to the death then. Because once you take away a man's reason to live, he becomes the most dangerous living being on this planet. And that's why they're failing right now. They, being the bankers, have so impacted humanity that a lot of people are waking up with no reason to live. That's why you have these protests all over the world, Berkeley and Paris. They can't see a future. All right, digression off. Cell phones are the practice run for what can be done with chipping. They want to usurp the 5 senses of man and perhaps add a few to control us even further. But all of our instrumentalities, our eyes, our ears, our taste, our touch, they want it all, man. Imagine, I'll just put this out there for you. Imagine that these microchips can do a couple things. Control your economy, meaning your access to your money. Therefore, you can't buy anything that they haven't pre-approved. And they'll come up with some excuse, some policy, why you're not allowed to buy that. How could you buy anything that is, say, a cure to cancer if they deem it's not a cure for cancer? The FDA today is coming out against a bunch of companies that are making claims. And I'm sure that there's a bunch of companies out there selling snake oil saying it's curing cancer. But we know that there's a cocktail of vitamins that you can take, B17, vitamin C, a bunch of other things to get yourself straightened out. And they say it's illegal for you to buy these things if we think that you're going to be interrupting the trillion-dollar industry that is cancer treatment. The scam that is the depopulation mechanism of the world. Remember, cancer provides a depopulation mechanism to make sure no one gets that old, and it also provides a means for them to bleed your family dry of any money that you have by charging you for your cancer treatments. They'll either get you through the insurance policy and the deductibles, or they'll just get you for what's not covered by the insurance and the deductibles. So they can kill you at will, really. They can force you to buy food that's GMO with these chips. They can force you to take treatments, otherwise you die really fast after you get sick. And if you so much as intellectually challenge them, they could just turn off your entire money supply. And imagine you have someone in your family that's helping the world to wake up. And so they immediately get sanctioned, monetarily speaking, your chips turned off. And then what they do is you say, well, it's okay. My family will buy extra food with their units and they'll feed me. Well, what if they penalize everyone you know? Because they know via your chip, GPS, who you're by. They know that you have 4 members that live inside the same house as you, and they put everyone on restricted rations to ensure they only have enough money to buy the food to keep themselves alive, making sure they can't give you any food. The algorithms of control are absolute when they get us microchipped. And again, they're probably going to create some really nice systems that are going to be able to make us better. Right? Second thing, we have another type of chip. This is being talked about a lot, and it's been experimented with a lot. And that's the nanosystems that are injected into your blood supply. Little tiny microscopic robots that have the ability to procreate using the atomic matter inside your body. They also have the ability to dismantle themselves and be passed out as waste in your body. They're talking about creating, swarm technology that will go after a tumor. Again, the first pitch is always a Robin Hood pitch. We're going to save you somehow. Save, save, save. Good, good, good. Right behind that is pure evil. And it's only because we allow these people to gain power and control over us through all the traditional mechanisms of money manipulation. That's really it. The second that we stop allowing them to make our fiat currency, they lose all power. They can't buy politicians anymore. They can't manipulate military-industrial complexes to send our children off to be killed in these ridiculous wars. They don't have the money to create fake news. They'll have money for a while. But the second we expose fake news for what it is and say, you're talking to me like a journalist, which is some condescending voice tone. No more. Everything you've been trained to do, you're obsolete now, instantaneously. This is why, in my opinion, it's so important that we wake up, and we wake up as fast as possible. And I'll tell you a little digression about waking up with this information like this, is that you'll wake up, and like I've said several times, you'll be super excited about the information that you've learned. But you'll know deep down inside you don't really have all the motives, all the science, all of their thinking. Because the second that, let's say, you wake up to this microchipping thing, you have to understand that right now, the microchipping conversation among the elite of the world is 40 years old, if not more. According to Aaron Rousseau, Nick Rockefeller was talking to him about this in the early 80s, and I mean like 81. Well, if they're willing to talk to him about it in the early 80s, how far back does it go before that? It was a pipe dream in the 70s to say we're going to miniaturize chips and put them in the human body, because everything was massive, big. Silicon wafers were just big chunky things that they weren't as large as they are today. But as things miniaturized, it became very viable. So let's say you wake up to this and you go 5-10 years and you put some effort into it. You try to think the way they think. You don't need any conspiracy videos of any kind or any other dialogue to really pretend that you're them and pretend you've got their paranoia of someone waking up and taking away everything that they have. But that's their thought every single second of the day. Eventually, you'll start boiling things down so beautifully that you can communicate it to other folks. That's why I try to make these videos after I've had a chance to boil this for 10 years. The microchipping thing in my history is at least 10 years old, and thinking about it. There's a great movie out there, which is Natalie Wood's last movie, Christopher Walken's, one of his legendary films, called Brainstorm. The people I've talked to that are my age, they either love it or they hate it. I don't know why you would hate it, but they created a technology which was basically virtual reality. You recorded a person's 5 senses into a tape, and then you could play it back. And whoever's playing it back has every single physical reaction that you had when you were in it. So your heartbeat matches theirs. If they have an orgasm, you have an orgasm, on and on and on. And it was a laboratory being funded by the government, and it was Christopher Walken and the woman who plays Nurse Ratched in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. They have this research, and they're trying to create beautiful things with it. Of course, there were some renegade guys that had sex with the tapes and sold those around the laboratory, or gave them away or whatever. But very quickly in this film, the military swoops in with this guy in a white suit, this sort of albino guy in a white suit, which just happens to match one of the guys that I've met in the world who worked for JPL creating terrain rendering software, which is where we get all of our pictures of Mars from. And it became really evil really fast, and they immediately took the technology and created all these military training things and very MK Ultra sort of mind control tapes. And one of the Christopher Walken's son, which is Natalie Wood's son in the film, puts his headset on and plays one of the most incredibly toxic tapes ever, and he nearly dies until his father, played by Christopher Walken, runs in the room and knocks the headset off his head. And then, very quickly in the film, they get locked out. His partner, played by Nurse Ratched character, she dies, and he's trying to access a tape because she put the damn headset on when she died. And so she recorded the afterlife in one of these headset recordings, and he just wants to listen to it. There's probably few slopes that are more slippery than transhumanism, because you have the allure to walk to the edge of this cliff for medical improvements on your body, perhaps just technical improvements in your body, but the slope becomes a cliff and becomes very slippery and curved, and it's where you can fall off into the precipice of tyranny. So there's great arguments to fix eyesight and hearing, and to rehabilitate a heart, to perhaps create nanosystems that will go inside the mind and rid us of mercury and aluminum and cancerous cells, restoring the health of the brain and the body. We're probably 10, 20 years away from really any major implementation of those high-end transhumanism features. I just need you to know that the evil that will grow at the same exact rate, if you have two columns of pros and cons to nanosystems and chips in the human body, for every one that's good, there's at least one that's bad, and really bad. The elite of the world have bragged, supposedly, over and over and over to multiple people around the world that they want to really reset this planet back to very, very small population as dictated by the Georgia Guidestones. And it's going to be the people that are selected to be there, the thinkers. Not people who think like us, but people who think like them. And the irony of it is if you had a bunch of them in one room, then no one would do any laundry, and they would be plotting to kill each other because their genetic paranoia is absolute. They're unhealthy human beings. So I think you feel me. I want to do a specific episode on chipping human beings because I think it's one of these things that so far has gone underneath the radar. And you see a little article here and there and you blow it off, and believe me, they're only releasing the information that they think will allure people to it. They're not releasing anything else. So I think we need to stimulate the conversation. So if you have, there's plenty of videos out there. If you have a great video that you know that really gets into this in depth and talks about some of the stuff, and maybe some of the stuff I didn't talk about, please post it in the comments below, because it's something that we need to kind of incubate up. I don't know that we can create policies to keep it from spreading into the bad column. There's always a secret laboratory well-funded by someone that will be bad. But until we replace our leaders with good folks who fight for us personally, who consider themselves nothing but a servant to man, we're running a huge risk of losing all control of our lives. So, as of this recording, and this is part of Season 3, which I haven't even done the Season 3 intro yet, everything has been moved over to deepthoughtsradio.com for everything. So if you're traditionally used to the audio feed, you need to get everything reset over to Deep Thoughts Radio. So I've moved the MK Ultra Radio site directly to Deep Thoughts Radio so you don't get confused, hopefully. But it's on video if you're on audio. It's on audio if you're on video. That's all I need to know. Always appreciate you guys listening to the very, very end. Thank you so much. Take care of yourself and someone else, and I'll see you in the next Deep Thoughts. Over now.